There we are. Hey, everyone. How's everyone doing? Great. So glad. Oh, more and more people are hopping on. That's good to see. Whew. Hey, Jordan.
I'm muted, but hi.
Sorry, I haven't seen your face in a while. So that's it. Hey. Anybody got any plans for the weekend? Staying at home? You gonna build anything at home? Do anything? No? Well, you know. Hey,
We're
Marilyn.
cooking dinner tonight.
What are you gonna make, Christina?
Chicken piccata.
That sounds delicious. Fancy, pinky up here.
Never made it before.
I hope it turns out well for you. Is that the one with capers in it?
Mhm.
I also have never made it. I've ate it though before.
We went to go buy flour, and there was like no flour except this $4 or $5 bag of flour. I think it's like organic or something. I don't know. This is not what I wanted. I just wanted the small bag.
Yeah. So legit, like if when this first went, like when the first craziness first dropped and everybody like went and rushed the store and bought all the stuff and it was just like wiped out, I went and I thought, oh, I'm gonna make this thing, I should grab some more flour. And it was they didn't even have the fancy kind. There was literally no flour. And I thought, what are all you people don't even make stuff normally, like what are you doing with all the flour? And then I went back, I don't know, a few weeks later, and like they had I found a small thing of flour, but I was just thinking of like how much like stuff I got wiped out and how like it kind of ebbs and flows and people come in. Like I'd been very good and I had not gone anywhere. I realized I hadn't been to the store in like 2 weeks and I was like, well, I had food in my house. I would not starve if I was like nuclear holocaust and I was stuck in my house. I guess a nuclear holocaust, we're all dead. But I was like, okay, I'm like can't make things now. Like I need to have components of stuff. And so I wrote a list and I went to the grocery store and I bought so much food, it was ridiculous. So anyways, people are still hopping on. And it's a minute past. I'm gonna give it a few more seconds to see if anybody wants to pop on. Marilyn, you're having a really good conversation right now.
I'm sorry. I have to use my friend's earbuds because mine will connect with my computer, but now I'm having to explain to him how to use mine.
Okay.
It's a mess. Oh my god, this isn't that hard.
Are you having some troubles right now? Sounds like we just need to take a moment, namaste, like do some yoga or something. I did literally just do yoga, so I'm all like energetic and ready to go do things. Yeah, it was nice. It was actually I didn't even do it by myself. It was like a virtual, like it was a friend of mine was like, you want to do lunch yoga? And I was like, let's do it. And so she was on doing yoga and we did on our respective TVs. It was what it was. Okay. I think anybody who's jumping on is going to jump on, and maybe more people show up later. It's a pretty relatively small class compared to how big the class is in normal. So we have some housekeeping. So let's start with that first. Housekeeping is I posted an announcement, so you all should have saw that on Canvas. You should have already received an email about evaluations. Like in class, you get them and you have to fill them out, and it's like usually you get pretty good participation because you're in class and you're kind of like shoved in your hand. I get that somebody sending me a link, I'm probably less likely to want to go click on it and do the thing. And so I get that it's a pain. And so I don't believe it should be a homework though, because your grade shouldn't be reflective. I can't know who did it, and I'm not. There's no recompense, but I do think that I can provide some kind of benefit to you, and so. I will give you a 1% on your grade, your final overall grade, if I get at least 90% of everybody who does about the evaluation. So that's part of it, is just to make sure that I get that we get them all. A little bit of it's also free writing, like there's going to be free writers. There's going to be people who won't have a chance or opportunity to. And so, but at some point, I should give some down the deadline. That will be based on like Thursday morning. So next Thursday morning at 90%, I will get on at 8:00. And if I don't have 90%, you're out of luck. So, so that evaluation bonus, if you don't have your link, I posted one on Canvas on that announcement, which I'll leave up until next Thursday. That was announcement number one. Announcement number two is about your final exam. So a little bit in the last of this is our last official lecture. So Tuesday, what we will do, I know it's sad, isn't it, Jordan? What we will do is review. If you come in with questions, we'll talk about questions. If not, I have more materials. We have had classes canceled and things that I have more things to talk about. We're skipping over some stuff. So you'll come in with questions, we'll talk about them, and then we'll move on, or we'll move on and I'll just lecture for a little bit and we'll be done. So our exam is on Thursday. My intentions though is because I get it to the end of the week and you're finishing your projects, you're finishing all these other things. And so I plan on opening the exam Wednesday morning and closing it Thursday night at 11:59 p.m. And you don't get the whole amount of time. You'll get like 2 hours to have the exam, kind of like last time, but that way you can work it in your schedule wherever it fits better. Instead of having it only on Thursday, recognizing that some of you might have to be working on where you get internet or how you're going to take the exam or all of those other things, that gives you flexibility of when you want to take the exam. And I'm not requiring you don't have to take it on Wednesday. I'm just opening it up so that if you're interested in taking it slightly earlier, you can. Don't forget to bring questions in on Tuesday. And are there any questions about the exam before I move on? Because I think that was our last like housekeeping thing. Make sure my chatty box is up here. Nope, nobody has anything. Great, you're all amazing and know all the things. All the things. Okay, so that was housekeeping, exam, lecture, and then your evaluation bonus, which I appreciate. It's valuable to me. I also like the feedback. So if you put it on your evaluation, or if you want to email me, and you can wait till after the semester so you don't feel like it can affect your grade. It won't, but just in case, so it doesn't impact your, can't feel like it impacts your grade. If you want to give me any like constructive feedback, like things that you liked or didn't like, I sometimes in class, I would have given you a paper one and then asked to like, they be held back until afterwards, because I like getting like what you liked and what you didn't like. Because there are things, if you like them and I can build on those, or things that like you wish we would have went more in detail on. Because sometimes like the material this isn't based on a book. This is based on things that like I'm pulling from lots of areas. And so if you're like, whoa, we spent way too much time on, I don't know, I feel like we didn't spend tons of time on anything, but like if we spend way too much time on break-even analysis, and I would much rather have talked about, or you spent too much time on replenishment and it was interesting, but I would rather spend more time on marketing, then it kind of helps me like gauge a little bit of student interest in those types of topics. Not that like it's totally, I will talk about those other topics, but it kind of helps me like format the class for futures going forward. So if you have any of those comments, I welcome them. So thank you. I mean, please don't like just tell me to F off, like that's not a constructive comments, please. Anyways, so are there any questions moving forward? Because I'm about to just get into it. Nope. Okay, make sure I get this thing here. Okay, dokies, alright, jokies. I'm starting the lecture on my little iPad and you don't see it. Let me screen share this bad boy. My Zoom is being slightly slow today, and I hope that doesn't affect. Everybody sees that? Perfect. I gotta close all the stuff behind my iPad though, or on my screen, because it gets distracting. So last week we talked about lots of things. We started talking about marketing aims, and we discussed like the number of times to get content. We went over this chart, which was at the very end of class really quickly, which was just the idea of the cost and feasibility of how we should approach our marketing. So if we're going to create a marketing campaign and you're only ever focused on getting new clients, you're missing a huge portion of your population of your customer base that you should be focusing on. So if I'm only ever focused on getting new customers, it's got a really high cost and a low feasibility of success. And so if I'm focusing on my new customers, I'm ignoring the retention of my current customers. Has anybody ever been part of like a satellite service or something like that, or like phone service, and you're like new people get like this really great deal and everybody else is getting like this huge, like you get a huge price increase, and it just makes you mad because you're like, what the heck is this? Like, I'm okay, fine, I'll quit being your customer, I'll go somewhere else and get a discount. And typically if you call them, they'll like, oh, we'll give you a discount too, and you're like, thanks. That is a type of situation where they're focused on new customers and they're not focusing on retention. And then when you call in to say, hey, I want to cancel, they're like, oh, no, we want to retain you. So like that group of people who like are giving you that discount, they're called the retention group. And what they're doing is they're saying anybody who doesn't care that the price went up, they don't, great, we'll get more money from you. And all of you who are like, oh no, I'm mad about this, they're trying to retain you. And the problem though, is as a customer, if you take that as a mantra for how you're going to treat your customers, you end up losing them, because at some point you're like, you're just jerking my chain around. You don't care about me. I'm just a number, and I'm just, you're trying to get as much money out of me as possible. And at some point there will be a service who somebody does value you, right? Like that is a thing. Like what, you think of somebody like AT&T, I think, has one of the worst customer service records. I might be wrong on whether the ranking, but it is one of the top customer service records, because they're just, people get so mad. It's the same thing as like, I think Comcast is one of the same, I think. But do you think about their whole mantra fits around this new customer, gaining new customers, doesn't focus on retention.
Oh yeah, they definitely focus on new customers versus like your existing customers. Because I have AT&T for my cell phone, we have Comcast for internet and like phone and also TV stuff, and like trying to get them to do anything just sucks. Like I pay for warranty for my phone, and when it broke, it was literally like pulling teeth to get them to send me a replacement phone.
Yeah, and then like, and so I used to have AT&T. I switched. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm not going to let you retain me, and I switched over to T-Mobile just to see if I would like it, because they had slightly better customer service ratings. So for me, it's worked. It's been fine, and it's been a lot nicer in terms of working with them. But that doesn't mean that they don't have their own problems, right? Although they did just buy Sprint, so hopefully that'll win out for me. Anyways, so we did all this kind of retention, and not that it doesn't matter, but we're moving on. And so one of the things that I wanted to finish for that before we moved into our kind of a jump and ship into a different component of that is, we talk of, okay, actually 2 points. One is there is online, and I told you about this last week or sometime, there's a document, it's like the cost of advertising. We're not gonna go over that today because with limited time and I don't wanna waste our time talking about it. I think it's valuable for you to go look at. That's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, go look at. I'm not asking you to know exactly the cost of something. One of the values that it talks about is it goes through different types of advertising. So TV advertising, direct mail marketing, telemarketing, etc. And it goes through the kind of setup, the cost of the media, and the cost to continue. Because sometimes there's a huge upfront cost and then there's no kind of back end cost, right? So, it might be, let's see, like a search engine, right? Like it's a free media, but you're gonna have to kind of keep paying for marketing, or something that has webcam, like there's just the ways in which you're paying. Because sometimes you're gonna pay up front and then you just reap the benefits, and sometimes you're paying kind of throughout to kind of continue. So like a commercial, you're gonna pay a lot to get the commercial made, and then you pay to have it aired, right? So there's costs associated with that, and just understanding that those are variable and vary by the different types. And so I would know that the second part of that is the pros and cons about like exposure versus the cons of like expensiveness, or like you think about email marketing, right? It's super cheap. I can send in an email super easy. It's super cheap. The pros is I'm attaching it to my current customers, right? Like, so I can really get to the people who I'm trying to retain. The con is that how many of you just see emails sometimes and just delete them because you're like, man, I got so many spam emails right now. Yeah, same.
All the time.
Yeah, right? And so that's a con, because if I'm only focused on my advertising to current customers through an email, I'm probably not going to be having a very good communication and relationship with my customers. And so, again, that was my brief version of those two things. There's a whole bunch more. It's like 2 pages of stuff. I would look at those if I were you. Again, those are on Canvas in the forums. The final part of what we have been talking about is this consistency of messaging, and we talked about that. We've mentioned it, is that when you have a message, you want to be consistent with how you're going to portray that message. And so so I think the example I give is Wendy's, and I talk about Wendy's Twitter because she burns. She needs aloe vera for whoever. Wendy's is on fire. And so the deal with Wendy's, though, is it changed its brand image, right? And so now it has this kind of modern version of Wendy's using, and it did it through Twitter. Like, it changed its image through Twitter. And then now it's advertising on TV, has matched its Twitter account. So it has a brand image now. But you can't have a brand that has a specific image and then try to do something else on Twitter. You can't have them kind of at odds, because you have to have a consistent message. So if all of a sudden Walmart, right, started being super snipey on Twitter, like, customers aren't okay with that, because that's not Walmart's image, and it's not the image that Walmart wants to have. So Walmart wants to have this, like, we're here for you, we're your neighborhood market, we're everyday low prices, you know, we're the everyday store that you should come to buy all the things, right? And if we're snappy at you and being like, you know, trolling you on Twitter, that's the opposite way of that. And so it's an inconsistent message, and what you and so the idea behind any marketing campaign is you have consistent messages. So think about it in terms of your project, right? And you think of what kind of advertising. Don't send out like an advertisement that's not consistent with their current messaging, right? You're not going to have a PETA advertisement coming out of, you know, Smithfield Foods, because that's not current advertising, right? That is not consistent with the message that Smithfield Food has. So it's one final kind of caveat to that is you can have different tones for different types of customers, right? You could say that we're super welcoming, like super, like, you're part of the family once you're a customer. And so then we have a tone, like our tonal difference is like, oh, you're part of the family. And new customers were like bright and shiny, but like, we're not, you know, like, come on, be part of the family. And so then when that tone is kind of different for those two different customers, you just want them to have consistent messages, right? So that tone might be different. So the way I might communicate with you youths might be different than how I communicate with Dr. English and Dr. Park, right? Because you're different, but the message that I would have for both of you should be the same, right? The same message, but I might have different tones. So keeping that up, which brings me, talking about ages, which brings us to our topic for the day, our major topic that one of two that I want to finish before this class ends, is talking about demographics, because demographics play so much into how we advertise and how we consume information. And so one of the first things I want to do is let us talk about the generations. So generations. Let's do some kind of scale here. Let's say this is 1925. And these are the silent generation. Let's say this is boomers. Oh, sorry, hold on. Let me put the date there. This is like 1946. 1946. Whoa, man, I can't write. 1946 through like 64, and 25 through 45. And these are boomers. These are the people we talk about. Silent Gen are these are people who are in nursing homes, or typically are very, very elderly people right now. Boomers are older. They're just not, I guess technically, like, my mom is a boomer, right? Like, but she's not, like, she's close to 60. And then we have 65 to 78, and that is Gen X. Then we have, and these ranges are not, this is one person's range. I'll go through that in a second. Through like 95, this is millennials. And then let's say 96 to 2010 are going to be Gen Zs. So again, these aren't fixed. So some people say that millennials are really 83 through 2000. Some say that like Gen X goes up through 85. I mean, so it depends on where we're looking. Really, it's these defining moments in these generations. So let's talk about some of those defining moments. Yeah, let's do this next one. Does anybody have an idea of some defining moments for the, here, I'll do the silent generation. Y'all be thinking about the boomers, okay? So silent generation, defining moments are going to be the Great Depression. This is going to be the Dust Bowl. World War II, right? McCarthyism. Does anybody want to give me an idea of kind of these pivotal things that happened for boomers? Oh, let me also open my little chatty box too, in case somebody starts chatting with me.
Was it civil rights?
Yeah, civil rights. Anybody else? War, huh? What is it good for? Vietnam. Their big thing was the Kennedy assassination. Watergate. Does everybody know Billy Joel sang a song? It's "We Didn't Start the Fire." And if you go through that song, it's like all these different time frames. So I just want you to know I'm in Watergate, punk rock, bacon, breaking Palestine, tear around the airline, and I just want to start singing to you, and I'm reining it in. Just want you to know how hard this is right now. And then like space. Space. This is the idea of the first person on the moon. So boomers had these big things, and think about that. These are the things that defined who they are and how they purchase and how they are viewing the world. Right? And so we're all having these vastly different experiences. So Gen X are going to be, does anybody want to give me something they think happened for Gen X that defines their generation?
First
I don't know
computers.
this actually. Huh?
First computers.
Yeah, first computers. And I don't, I agree. We're going to be clear on that because we're talking about like the personal computer will come later, right? But this is like the generation that was like, whoa, computers exist. Like we can have, and they're more likely to be like on the forefront of like when we can start using these things and developing them. Does anybody else want to go Gen X?
Maybe like the Kuwait Wars. Does that have anything to do with this? Or am I too early?
No, so I don't have Kuwait. I'm going to put down Desert Storm because I think that we're going to combine Kuwait and Desert Storm for all of that. But like Desert Storm, the Iranian hostage situation, MTV, when there were actually videos, video killed the radio star, this is when this happened. AIDS cracks Bernie gets. And one of the other, let's say, I'm going to write two more. Does anybody have another one before I write my two? The two kind of big ones that I have for them.
I have a question.
Yes.
So are these defining moments, are they happening within like the time, like the 65 to 78, or are they like happening when they start getting like adults?
These are happening as they're getting into adulthood. Like, so not necessarily adulthood. These are things that are happening throughout their lives, right? So like, think about for you, do you all remember how, because you're young, how old were you when 9/11 happened?
3.
Okay, so for my generation, I was in high school when 9/11 happened, okay? And so for me, like that defined a huge shift in my, like in the millennial culture and the millennial, like how we view the world, right? So for you, are gonna be Sandy Hook. We're gonna get to those in a second too. We'll write yours down. But like Gen Z, these are things
ours
that
is coronavirus.
Yes, coronavirus. Yeah. We'll throw that into yours too. That's definitely a great update. I should definitely add it to my list over here, because it wasn't on there before.
We're gonna be
Coronavirus.
getting interviewed by our grandkids one day about going through this.
Yeah, think about those things. Like, I remember talking to my mom and being like, where were you when Kennedy died? And like, she had a story about being in school and like hearing about it, right? Where were you when, you know, when this thing happened? So it's not during 46 to 64. It's their life after that fact. Those are just the years in which they were born. So that's a good question, Christina. I'm going to go through just two more for the Gen Zers. This is fall of Berlin Wall, because that was a big one for them, and the Challenger explosion. So again, y'all are quite young, but Berlin coming down, the Berlin Wall was a big deal coming down. Mikhail Gorbachev led, like the fall of the Berlin Wall, the change of the USSR, like all of these things were huge moments for the Gen Z, for Gen Xers. The other thing is the Challenger explosion. These are people who were so excited. Their parents were the ones who were like, saw, you know, Neil Armstrong go on the moon. Their kids were the ones who were watching the Challenger start off. It was a, this is Sally Ride. It was a space shuttle that went up and exploded on national television. And it was this huge blow to space discovery and to the deaths of those people. I mean, it was a big deal. These are things that define Gen X. Does anybody want to, I already said one for millennials. 9/11, huge pivotal moment for millennials. And that's one of the arguments that people make for how they define the ages, is that some people argue that for millennials, you had to be consciously aware of the turn of the century. So you had to be aware of when it switched over to 2000, and which is why some people say it's 95, some people say it's 2000. I'm not going to get into it. And one of those is that you had to be kind of aware of 9/11 when it happened, right? So y'all are not millennials. Like, you were 3. I'm actually, Matthew, if he's on, he's a millennial.
Yeah, I'm a millennial.
Yeah, right. I was like, wait, let's clarify. Matthew is a millennial with me. Right, but like, so 9/11. So what else happened? So what else defines millennials?
Y2K.
Yeah, thank you. See, Matthew, my other millennial, because I thought the same thing. Okay, Y2K, which was where we all thought the computers were going to crash at the turn of the century. I don't know. It was big. People stockpiled things.
Really big
Corona
deal.
stockpiling. My grandma bought all the things and had it stored.
Toilet paper.
Legit. I mean, it wasn't as bad as it is here where all the stores were empty, but everybody was stockpiling things because they were so afraid that like the entire economic system was going to collapse. All the banks were going to close because their computer systems were going to break because of the turning of the century.
We slept at my mom's work.
See? Yeah.
My mom worked for a power company. She still does, a different power company. And they were so worried that the power grid would go down on the city that they had all the employees and their families all come to work and like stay there overnight because they were worried about what was going to happen.
Huh. See,
Like,
like
you would have never thought that, but that was like, it was like a serious thing.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like one of the things that the U.S. government that I think Donald Trump did well is that like we still had these stockpiles of documents that we had saved from the early 90s because we were afraid the Y2K was happening. It was like this Y2K like resource management group that they were like, why are we still having these things? It is 20 years later. Like at this point, all that stuff we don't need it anymore. Y2K was a big one. Anybody else want to say something else we think that shifted or changed or that came alive during the millennial my people's generations?
Grunge music.
Did you say Clinton?
Yeah, so I'm gonna put grunge music down because it's fun. We got some Nirvana in here. And then we say the Clintons. Those are definitely like I think Bill Clinton's and specifically for the Clintons there, we might think of Bill Clinton's like a
Scandal.
Yeah, the scandal would probably be a bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just the presidency, because we're not defining these by the presidency. We're defining it by these kind of big things that are existing. I'm going to throw out here Google.
Recession.
Google, Yahoo. They all came to life during this generation. Social media we were the ones who started it. Like I was in college and was one of the first, like I had Facebook since 2005. It was when it was just, super simple and you posted updates and then Zynga and MySpace and all these other things. So it's social media. Okay, I'm running out of space, so we're gonna switch over to Gen Zs. Anybody want to give me what? Well, you already said coronavirus. The coronavirus. Anybody else want to say what defines your generation? Things that you're aware of that are like just as big things that you think your grandkids are gonna ask you about.
Great Recession. Would that work here?
Yeah, that totally works here. That's literally one that's on my sheet. Just BT dubs. The Great Recession. There's so much about how your generation saves money and views working and livelihood different than my generation and previous generations because you lived through the Great Recession. Because some of you went through a time where your parents lost jobs or you lost houses or people, were without money or, going through this really tightening of belt straps or the downturn economy. That definitely defines like how you view the world, whether you think about it or not, it does. Anybody else?
I was going to say global warming.
Yeah, let's throw that out there. Like, I'm going to put environmentalism just to be more broad. Environmentalism. I know it's getting really
We're seeing
small.
a big resurgence of it, like in our college generation, like a big push for like environmentalism.
Yeah, and I'm fine with global warming. I mean, I'm fine with putting that down. I just didn't want to be only so specific because there's lots of things. It's, so we are talking about global warming and climate change. So more so like climate change. And then also like you think about the brush fires, in Australia, all of these kind of things are defining your generation. I'm going to throw out there Sandy Hook.
Riley also said iPhone in the chat.
Oh, yeah, iPhone. That's a good one.
Did you say like 2012? Because we all thought the world was ending.
Yeah, that's a great one. 2012, man.
Was it the Mayan calendar?
Yeah, right. Like then it was, these are things that like the first Black president, right? Marriage equality. These are things that like the next generation, that will be normal for them. That we will have always had a Black president, that we will have always had marriage equality for everybody, that we will have always had those things. But your generation, but that didn't exist until your generation, right? Like it came about as you're aging on. And like your views on marriage equality is vastly different than Gen X's views on marriage equality. I talk about Sandy Hook, just really quick before, Matthew, what's the shooting that you think of?
Columbine.
Yeah, Columbine. That's the one that defines the millennials generation. That was like this mass school shooting, and it was tied it to video games, and that was the first kind of like connection to these video games because we had Doom and things like that, and it was like, did this cause the shooting? And then you have Sandy Hook, and you have this kind of gun control fight and argue and discussion that's happening during your generation, and whether that whatever comes of that, it doesn't matter. But those are things that are going to define how you view the world. And so we're gonna end that unless anybody has any more that you want to throw at me real quick. No. Okay, so we went through all of this, because it's fun, let's be clear, because it's fun, but also there's this, the idea is if you're gonna market to people, you have to understand who you're marketing to, right? And you got to think about how those generations are going to receive your marketing information. And so when you're talking, like if you make a joke about Nirvana, my generation's probably going to get that joke, right? Not Gen Z, but the next generation will probably not get that. Like that's not a joke that they're going to get, or that when we talk about, the Iranian hostage situation, do any of you know what that is? I mean, you can Google it. There's movies about it. I think Argo is about the Iranian hostage situation. So now it's becoming popular media, but it's not a thing that defines your generation. It's not a thing that you look back to. It's not a touch point where you're like, oh, this happened in life, right? Coronavirus will be a touch point. Your grandkids, you'll be like, yeah, I was in college and I had to go all online because we had this major global pandemic, right? And thousands of people died. And millions of people got sick. I mean, I think, I want to say hundreds of thousands of people are dead, but I don't know the numbers right now. So I don't want to don't quote me on that. And so we think about how changing income and buying power post-recession, right? Like how that changed how people consumed. And then you started marketing to different people. And so the pre-2000s, we typically marketed to men. That was a thing. Everybody marketed to men. because men arguably held the purse strings up until that point, or the idea kind of culturally that they held the purse strings. The problem with that is that men weren't making those household decisions. There might have been this idea that men were purchasing or maybe bringing home the bacon or making the money for the household. And that wasn't always true either, but that was the idea or the perception. But women were making the household. Women were shopping more than men. Women were making, oh, sorry, there's my like feedback. And so this idea of like how we're targeting. And so then what you see is after the 2000s, you started seeing the shift in advertising. They're like, oh, let's start targeting women. Let's start targeting families. Let's start targeting these kind of different groups. There's also this change, and I'm gonna scroll this up. Sorry that that's so teeny tiny. I didn't mean to make it so small. I just ran out of space. One of the other things is this changing diversity or demographics. I know I keep changing what I'm going to say. Changing demographics. So we think about diversity of food, consumed / demanded. How many of you only eat meat and potatoes? Can I get little hands? I can't see anybody. How many of you like tacos? Yeah, right? How many of you have ate Chinese food or pizza
Not
or, huh?
I said not bats.
Not bad. Yeah, we're not eating bats, but, sushi or, kind of all of these kind of alternative types of foods. Sorry, I didn't mean I was moving something. Kind of all of these other alternative types of foods. That is a generational thing. That's this huge generational shift. You think of what your grandparents ate was literally like homegrown food that they ate back home, right? Like it was the very traditional types of diets for an American, a very traditional American diet. If they grew up in the South, it's a very Southern type of diet. They grew up somewhere else, they might have, other types of influences. What we see now is this kind of dietary diversity. So as a marketer, you're not marketing just to, the meat and potato person. You're marketing that we're marketing tacos and we're marketing all these other types of things. So we need to innovate. We have to innovate to address this. Let's think about this, that in terms of changing demographics, in 1970, 1% of births were multiracial. 1% of births were multiracial. In 2010, because that was, or 2013, sorry. 2013. That was the latest one I could find at the time I was looking for this. That number is 10% of births are multiracial. So again, we have this kind of huge racial change in the U.S. I mean, we could talk about other countries as well, but we have this racial change that's happening. So we have this demographic. We have these different points of time that we're going to and we're marketing to. We have dietary changes. We have this racial change. Interracial the kind of identity is one of the fastest growing in America. So it's not any individual one, but just kind of this combination or this multiracial. We think about changing in age. There's a change in culture, age, obviously, social, ethical kind of views, right? And so when we have all of these changes, they're going to lead to how we have to address them differently in how we market to those people, right? So not even just in how we're marketing, because we talked about the different types of marketing, but also in the ways how we form what we communicate, right? There was and I don't remember what the ad was, but it was these like big points in time in history over time. I think it was like, it had like the nuclear bomb, it had these other things. And it was talking about like our stewardship of the earth and kind of like how, I think it was an ad for environmentalism, but it was like all of these big things from these different Chernobyl, the Space Challenger, all of these other components. And it was talking about, I think it was like an ad for like GE or like clean energy or something like that. I think that's what it was. But what they did was they didn't attack, but they showed pivotal points in every generation. So they're not just targeting kind of an older generation. They're saying, hey, here's all of these things, and everybody can relate to something on this ad, and we want to have cleaner energy, and that's why GE is going to help you in some way. And so, yeah, it's a break time, right? It's break time. I wanted to make sure we talked about this demographics. Oh, one more thing. Sorry, I lied to you. One more thing about this. There's also this changing family. So you think about what the traditional family looked like in 1970 and what a family in America looks like today. How has that changed over time?
Both parents work.
Ended. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, no, both parents worked. Matthew, that absolutely right. Like we have the household labor, whether by necessity or desire. What were you saying, Jordan?
I was gonna say blended families, like since the divorce rate's really high, there's always like, you have like step siblings or, like half siblings.
No, absolutely. I don't know. That's totally one. Like this blended family, this idea that like it's not or a non-nuclear family, right? Which is part of this blended idea that like it's not just a mom and a dad had 1.2 kids at home or 2.3 kids at home, and like it has shifted. You're gonna have these kind of these blended families where there's siblings or there's different different out. It might be two moms or two dads, right? Like it's gonna have different looks of the way, or it's gonna be a single parent. Right? Like that's another thing is this big part that like there's not always two parent households, and so there's these kind of single parents having to deal with different kids. And so again, how we think about how decisions are being made, we have to figure out how to target those things. And what's funny is there's also, I told you that like we've targeted men, and then we said, hey, let's start targeting women. And then there's also this like understanding that there are men who are also shopping for food and things. And so that we don't need to just like swing this pendulum so far to the other side. We need to understand that like we're marketing to people and we're marketing to families. And so instead of marketing to women specifically, instead of marketing to men specifically, we're marketing to the people, buying family goods, right? And we're marketing to people who are, buying, buying the good versus the sex of the person buying the good. I think that is it for what I wanted to make sure we covered on demographics. I had some more silly things that I could talk about some other time, but we'll be done with that. I just really want to make sure we talked into demographics because they're going to change how we market, right? If I'm marketing a new product, who am I? So let's do this. Sorry, because one of my things is you remember that taco that I told you about the other day that you could get a free one? It was the Flamin' Hot Taco, Locos Taco, made out of Doritos. Sorry, just make sure somebody recognizes that. So that's a new product Taco Bell's marketing. Are they going to market to boomers? You think that they're trying to target boomers for this Dorito taco? Who do you think they're targeting for that? Yeah, I see Christine. Anybody else? Oh, thanks, Christine.
College kids.
Yeah, college kids, right? They're marketing probably young millennials, and then they're marketing to college kids and even younger kids, right, to get their parents to go get them for them. And so the ways they're going to market that are different. They're not putting ads in newspapers. They're probably not airing advertisements on Fox News or CNN because your generations are typically not watching news channels, right? They're putting ads on Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and whatever else is you're using, TikTok, right? I don't know if TikTok has ads, but if they did, Taco Bell would put an ad on there. And so, right, like they're targeting you where you are. So think about sometimes, again, when you're advertising, who you are trying to get, how you're going to market to them. We're going to take a break. If everybody wants to take a quick minute to go get water or something. I have food news, but does anybody else have food news? I told you that I had food news, and I'm slightly cheating. I'm looking at my food news right now. I'm like, oh, what's my food news? There is, let me tell you food news. Nope. Okay. I can't tell if you need this or not. Okay. I had what was my so Fruity Pebbles is posting educational videos for kids on Facebook and Instagram, and this kind of ties into the idea of like using your brand and the messaging to be like, oh yeah, we're really good, we're posting educational videos, but every time you watch this video and Fruity Pebbles is on there, you get this kind of re-advertising, and so you're kind of being inundated with the idea of Fruity Pebbles, and I bet their market share of the market goes up slightly. I just want to throw that out there. I also, my second food news was I saw this. It was not BuzzFeed. I wanted to call it BuzzFeed. I don't think it was BuzzFeed. It was this thing, and it was talking about the food that defines your state. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. What food defines my state? And so I clicked on it, right? And I started with Arkansas because it's at the top of the list and it was easier to get to. And so I was talking about Fruity Pebbles, which is what made me think of it. It was a hot dog with Fruity Pebbles on it. And I thought, I have never seen this in the state of Arkansas before. Nobody ate this. Like, this is the weirdest thing ever. Like, this is not a thing people eat. And I thought, like chocolate gravy. Do you all have chocolate gravy here in Tennessee?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, somebody said yes. Matthew
My whole
did.
life. My whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I get like a count here? Here, I'm gonna send out a poll because I want to try this poll. Because I want to try how this works. Add a question. Oh, it's got to sign me in. What the heck is happening here? Sorry. This is a much longer process than I thought this was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be like ticky ticky tack tack and we'll be done. And I could just, do my thing here. Okay, it is not worth it. I'm sorry, I will not do a poll. I have one person who says that they've done had chocolate gravy. It's gravy made out of chocolate. I mean, it's like, huh?
Chocolate gravy is the best.
Yeah, right. Like I don't have it a lot, but I grew up with it every once in a while. But like I think like that was a thing in Arkansas. That makes sense. Do you want to know what the Tennessee one was? Yes, everybody. Yeah, please. Shovel fries. Do you eat a lot of shovel fries here? It was fries in a shovel over a fire. Is that a thing?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
I also had not. I'm sure that what they did, this person, whoever made this thing, found the weirdest food and was like, this is this thing. And it was weird. And I looked for Colorado because I thought, hey, I lived there. I ate a lot of weird things. And they had like something normal. It was like, some kind of like a taco or something. And you're like, I just feel like these people don't want to go to the certain states or don't want to do enough research. And so then they're like, shovel fries. That should define Tennessee. So my question to you is, what food should define Tennessee, do you think?
Wait, can we go back to that chocolate gravy? What is that? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so like you put it over like biscuits, like it's like biscuits and gravy. It's made with like flour, cocoa, some sugar, some vanilla, and butter. I think quite a bit of butter and milk. That's it. So like you mix it around and you stir it like white gravy kind of. But then it's made with cocoa powder, and so it depends on how much sugar you put into it. Like ours wasn't ever like super super sweet, but it was like, I mean, it's sweet. It's not like not sweet. Yeah, Christina, here on that one. But it's not super super sweet, but it's like it's just chocolate gravy. It's like semi-sweet chocolateness on a biscuit, and you eat it, and it's delicious.
Seems legit.
You know what? If I'd have to look for a recipe. I have a recipe from my mom. My mom's recipe, but it's in the kitchen. So, and I'd have to look for it. So, if I think about it, I will share that with you all in case you're inclined and you have flour and all the other ingredients to make chocolate gravy.
There's a lady that makes my dad chocolate gravy at every function we have at church.
See, it's so good. I don't make it because I don't eat a lot of biscuits. And I think it also makes a lot. I feel like the recipe makes a lot of gravy, and you're always left over with like, what the heck do you do with all this gravy? So talking about, you all now know, some of you at least know what chocolate gravy is. I went to in Colorado, nobody knew. They thought it was the weirdest, most disgusting thing ever. They're like, you're putting chocolate on a biscuit. And you're like, first of all, I would eat just regular, put Hershey's chocolate on a biscuit and I'd eat that. But yeah, chocolate gravy. And they thought it was the weirdest ever. So I'm glad to hear that other people have it. Let's see, we have hash brown casserole. Oh man, that is good. I'm here for that. Check that box. Anything from Cracker Barrel, that's solid. Is Cracker Barrel from Tennessee? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's from
Yes.
where I live.
Okay. Because I had like a friend, she's like all about the Cracker Barrel. And like we went to Cracker Barrels growing up, but like that makes more sense. Yes, Cracker Barrel is also delicious. And then heavy breakfast. Yeah, I mean a good breakfast. Although, is there a good breakfast place around? I mean, I can't go right now, but is there a good breakfast place around Knoxville? Or somewhere that's not Cracker Barrel? I could go to Cracker Barrel, but
First watch.
There's a good biscuit place down by like Main Event. I can't
By
remember.
Main
I think it's like Maple Street Biscuits or something like that.
write this down. Maple Street.
It's really good.
You got to do Scrambled Jakes or Gourmet Market. Those
Gourmet
are
Market slaps.
Gourmet Market is
It's good. What's it? Gourmet Market.
If you go to
It's-
Scrambled Jakes, you need to go super early though, or you're gonna wait like 2 hours.
yeah, it's really good though. Scrambled Jakes does like a giant cinnamon roll,
Oh,
What?
talk
a
my
full
language.
plate size cinnamon roll.
Like
and
we're gonna
then,
share
like-
this with people, not just for myself.
You can, or
Yeah,
you
you can, or you can just power through it and eat the whole thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't know how you feel about
and-
brunch, but Balter Beer Works is really good.
I mean, I'm all for Baltic beer. I'm just gonna take all
Yeah.
these notes.
Mimosas at Balter Beer Works is the real key.
No, I appreciate this. I just sometimes you don't know. Like when I was in Colorado, there was this place called Silver Grove Cafe, and they had these huge cinnamon rolls that I sent people there because they were that good. And then I remember talking in class because we talked about some of those topics, and a student had told me about this one breakfast place, and it was like this hidey hole one that I'd never heard of, and it was so good. And so I feel like tell me your institutional knowledge. I'm all for this. So thank you all for the suggestions here. I will take them a note as soon as I am no longer quarantined into a house and we're not stuck at home. Stay at home orders. # be safe. Okay. Let's jump back in it so we can jump in it for the rest of the thing. So we are talking about demographics, Scrambled Jakes. Oh, Madison also agrees with Pete's Diner downtown. I'll keep that up. I need to write all these somewhere that's not on this note here. So we briefly had mentioned what a product mix is. It's the idea that like you want to introduce a new product in. I think that you all wrote papers about them, so I feel like we're pretty good with understanding it's a mix of goods that you sell in a store. I think we talked about it earlier in the semester, super briefly, like not formally. The idea that I want to talk about with product mix was more so like this idea that you're introducing a new product, and that does it fit in line with your other goods? Does it fit your brand missions? Is it going to, who's going to use and consume your product? An example of this is Disney makes horror movies. Disney makes scary movies. They don't market them as Disney though. They own I can't tell you right now. They have a different brand that they put their horror movies out in. It's a famous one, like it's a big one you all know, or that you would know if you like scary movies. So Disney is making scary movies, but it's not consistent in line with their branding of Disney to have scary movies with Disney on it. And so they created a separate brand in order to market their scary movies. And so they have this kind of other one. It's the same way with like, is Miramax? Who owns Miramax? I know I'm looking. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I was going to look it up. It does not matter. And so there's this idea that like it's on brand, right? So like if you're a brand and you have been, you create this, you're all for happy people and happy little kids. You're probably not going to come out with, Saw 4 that, like that's not a brand for you. And so you want to make sure that a new product you're introducing into your mix fits with everything else you have in your mix. And if it doesn't, then you have a good reason to shift into that focus. If you're like, hey, I'm IHOP and I want to start selling burgers, you probably can't rename your company iBurgers, right? Like International House of Burgers. That's bad. That's weird, right? But what you could do is say, hey, we want to start getting into the lunch crowd. We're going to start offering a lunch menu. And that's a way to like shift and change your offerings, right? And you're changing your product mix, but you still have an identity. And so I wanted to get into the product life cycle. And normally on an exam, I would have made you draw this. I'm not, because it's not worth it to get you all to like email me things. But I would definitely know them because I think you will be asked questions about them. So just throwing that out there. So the product life cycle is, let's say something like this, where I want to have these two lines here. This is over time. And we're going to shoop. And so what we have is R&D, so research and development. And this is, stage one. And this is for, do you remember when we talked about your consumers and that they were the different stages? They were innovators. So remember this? Early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. We talked about that, right? We did. We all might have forgotten it. So let's like tie that in here real quick. Shoop. These are your innovators. So this idea that during this research and development, these are the people in the marketplace in terms of adoption of technology or adoption of a new good who are like, yeah, I want the new good and I'm going to try to come out here and get it. The next step is the intro stage, introduction. I'm just being short. And these are your early adopters. So this is when you're introducing a new good, right? And we're talking about this line is sales. So this line is how well we're doing. So these are your early adopters. These are people who are dropping. So you're introducing your new product. So R&D was like, you have your beta testers. Those are your innovators. You have your intro is like, hey, your early adopters, the people who are willing to, it's dropping in the market. This would be Connor and trying the Twix bar, right? Like he was an early adopter. He said, yeah, I see this. I'm going to go ahead and just try this, right? It was an introduction. The third stage is growth. And these are, these are early majority. So the intro, we introduced it. This step says, hey, we're growing. This brand of this product, the sales are growing. We're still growing as we move through here. This next stage is maturity. And these are late majority. And the idea is that we're hitting that peak. We're hitting the peak of the sales that we were ever sell. So we introduced it. It grew in the market. We're selling all that we possibly can. Now we're hitting the peak of all the things we're going to ever hit. And this is where the late majority is really adopting. So the late majority is like, oh yeah, everybody else has already tried it and they all talk about it. It's really good. I should do it. These are people picking up, an iPhone 1 when iPhone, 3 came out, right? Or iPhone 2 came out. Like they're picking up an older one, but it's been tried and true now. The final stage is decline. And these people are laggards. These are the people picking up an iPhone 1 when iPhone 5 was out. In case you wanted to know, I'm relating it to iPhones. We could figure out another product, but that's the one that's sticking with me. Once an iPhone 5 is out, who wants an iPhone 1? Like, they're old, they're clunky, they're not doing half as many things as an iPhone 5, right? But a laggard is somebody who's like never adopts technology. So they're like, sure, I'll go get the old one. I literally, when I bought an iPhone 10, it was a treat, like whenever they came out, and that was because I needed a new phone, and I was like, sure, let's do it. I sold my iPhone, or I gave my iPhone 5 to a friend of mine because he didn't have a phone. He did not have a cell phone, and was like, here, you can have this, right? And so it wasn't a 5, it was a 6. And so I gave my 6 to him, and he was like, great, this is fun. And and he's super proud of it, and he's excited about it because he's a laggard in adopting technology. And so when we talk about the product life cycle, That's what this is, this product life cycle. You're going to go through this R&D, this intro, this growth, this maturity, and this decline stage, and then it's death. And you either have to come back and revitalize it, or you have to figure out something, because your sales are going to tack off, right? Because people aren't interested in your goods anymore. Now, we might think of somebody who's like, Coca-Cola has been around forever, right? They're not declining. They haven't hit their decline. One, they've continuously done a lot of advertising, and they've kept themselves in that growth and maturity stage, right? There's been times where like their market shares have tacked off, and what they've done is they've reintroduced, they've revitalized, they've done a whole bunch of things in order to try to continue to stay in that mind of the early and late majority kind of group of new products, and just to stay out there. We think about a lot of fidget spinners. How many of you have bought a fidget spinner in the last 2 weeks? I don't see anybody saying that they have. Right? Yeah, nobody did. But like a year ago or 2 years ago, whenever they were the hype of the world, right? Those suckers were going off the shelf like gangbusters. Like they were just like making a killing for these fidget spinners. And part of that, right, is that it hit its growth majority and it hit maturity and then a decline, and you don't sell very many of those anymore. Which ties in, I want to add to what we're going to come back to this chart in a minute, so I'm going to leave it there. We're going to call this hype cycle. So we have this kind of product cycle and how it goes into these stages, and we're going to have something similar, and we're going to call it the hype cycle. And this is over time. And this is visibility. And this is, I got to draw this up. This is some kind of, let's call this a trigger. They called it a tech trigger, and it doesn't have to be technology. This could be a hype cycle for anything, but let's think of something. It's a trigger. It's something that's triggering the visibility of this product, right? This is starting to go viral on all of the social media sites, right? There's a trigger to that. Somebody important, somebody that everybody's watching their videos, whatever the case is, and it's going to trigger this visibility. Like all of a sudden, everybody knows about it, right? And what we do is we hit this peak of inflated expectations. So we had this hype, everybody's talking about it, we're all talking about the thing, and then we kind of hit the peak of like how high, the most visible this thing will ever be. Okay, it is the most visible, just for reference, this line over here, this flat line is lower than this peak. This peak is as high as you will ever be. And this is like, we can go through 100 different things. Like, oh, what's the footballer's name? And he's super popular, or he was super popular, and like he's on commercials now with some kind of insurance. He was with Tennessee, and then he moved to Denver.
Peyton?
Thank you. Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, there was a trigger, right? He was really popular. He won a whole bunch of games. There was a trigger, right? And then there was this peak of expectations of like, how good is he going to be? And then what we saw was this, we get to this point, which is the trough of disillusionment. So think about after he quit football and there was kind of like went away for a little bit. He wasn't popular anymore. He wasn't a big deal. I mean, he was still visible. He just wasn't like, he lost a lot of the luster he had when he was playing football, right? This is the fidget spinner after everybody has one now. Everybody was talking about them. It's not the rage anymore. And then what we go through is we go through this slope of enlightenment. These are really nice names. They're calling this. Basically, you go through this, like you peak out of in terms of visibility, the amount of hype that this product is going to get. And then you go through this stage of like, it's dropping off. And then we kind of get like a rebound effect of like, oh, okay, well, it wasn't basically like, I'm going to totally give another one. It's another actory one. Anne Hathaway went through this in terms of hype. And we could go through lots of other people, but Anne Hathaway had this like this meteoric rise. She was super A-listy for a long time. And then all of a sudden it was like this trigger switched and everybody's like, we don't like Anne Hathaway. And her interest or her star diminished. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, maybe we like jumped the ship on this. She actually was a good actress, right? Like she did do things. And then you saw like Les Mis came out and she came back up to the slope of enlightenment. Again, we can go back to Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning played, everybody really liked him, and then he quit playing and we kind of dropped off. And then he started doing commercials again. We're like, oh yeah, we still like Peyton Manning, right? Slope of enlightenment, we're coming back up. And then what we hit is this plateau, P-A-U, of productivity. I'm talking about people, these are for products, right? This is this plateau of how they're going to be. They've hit, and that might not be high, it might be low, it might go away, right? This is the hype cycle. This is about like the plateau of where they're going to say, Peyton Manning is now the guy in the commercial. I know you all know him from football, and I know he was in football, but like, I want to relate him to because I've seen the commercials on YouTube, right? Like I don't know, I can't even tell you what it is. He sings songs with Brad Paisley. That's what I know, right? This is what I know. And so we think the same thing for goods, right? Like products are the same way. Like there's this can anybody think of a new product that came out last year that was like really big and then kind of like you got it and you're like, whatever, but then like you still might go and get it now? Anybody think of something like that? Or give me an example of a hype cycle. That would be nice.
Oh, okay, this one's kind of old, but remember those like little silly bands, and they were shapes, and they were like
I was
so
thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
like
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
had them, but then they went away,
Yeah.
and like I don't think they exist anymore.
Yeah, so that would be the same. There was some trigger, some reason why everybody was like, yeah, we want to have these bands, right? And everybody loved them, and then everybody had them, and so their star went away. People quit buying them, you quit wearing them, right? And their plateau is negative, it's zero. There's no visibility. It went away. So that plateau doesn't have to be positive. Oh, Heather Mandis, you still have all yours. I mean, it's lovely. I mean, you keep wearing them,
Good girl, bring them back.
I mean, that wasn't my demographic, but like in my youth, there was a stage of like Beanie Babies, and they were like, boom, everybody loved Beanie Babies, and then it was like, yeah, Beanie Babies, and then it was like, okay, and then there are some people who still buy and like and consume Beanie Babies. I consume, not eat, but like they eat the Beanie Babies. That they still find enjoyment from them, right? There was a trough, and then there's some plateau, and it's really low visibility. I think of like, here's one. Think about a TV show or something, right? Like The Office. When The Office first came out, right? It was like, a little bit. And then all of a sudden, like everybody talked about The Office, and it hit this peak. And then like it kind of dropped off, right? Like it dropped off. It wasn't as big. And then all of a sudden it was on Netflix. It was on this, it got a resurgence. There were memes about it coming out. And then it plateaued off. Memes. Oh my goodness, the amount of memes we use. They go through this hype cycle super fast, right? How many of you have seen the meme with the lady with the cat anymore? The lady, she's yelling and the cat's like, and they talk, right? I'm going to come back to you, Nathan, in just a second. Right? That was a meme. It was everywhere for like a week, for a few weeks. And then I don't see anybody posting that meme anymore, right? It hyped, it hit its peak, and then now it's hit whatever level that people are going to use it. Every once in a while I'll see it, but it's not near the level that we had before. Nathan talks about bands and artists, and that is totally true, right? There are artists that like, especially that they hit like a super high meteoric rise, and then eventually they're gonna, you hit the peak of whatever expectation you had out of a band, and then they're not gonna keep hitting that expectation, right? Like they rose because of something amazing that happened, and then there's gonna be a slope or drop off. It's why we often call it the sophomore album slump. Is it really that their sophomore album is terrible? Typically not. It's that their sophomore album doesn't jump from the amazingness you had such high expectations that they can't beat those expectations because the band only exists in the music that they still are producing. So their second album typically performed less well as their first album. And then they kind of come back up. You say, oh no, I still like them. I like the second album. And you hit their plateau of productivity. Some bands, that means they go out. Some bands, they're always liked. Somebody had a comment?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say that I feel like I've kind of noticed that there's a lot of bands, particularly like rock bands. I know this is a little bit off topic of the class, but like I pay attention to this a lot. Usually it's like three albums that are roughly similar or the same, and then their fourth to fifth one will be a drastic change from what they usually do. And like sometimes it's really successful, sometimes it's not. And then the next one after that one that they do, whether it's one or two that are like more experimental, then the one that they do when they come back is like an aggressive return to like their original stuff. And it's like usually like their hardest, like most accepted, like most like globally accepted stuff. And that's when they become like international stars. If that makes
Yeah. No, I could see that. I mean, I could see where people like are going through and making something and then deciding to deviate from that and then jumping back into like here's what made us super successful, and then that becomes what makes them super successful because they're true to their art. And and I'm sure that like talk about critical acclaim and things like that they're getting, because I imagine at that point that's when they're getting more critical acclaim. They came back to their roots, they're really good, and then they're coming back to those things. Yeah, I think that's a solid example of the hype cycle. The hype cycle fits into the product cycle. I know I'm jumping back into the hype cycle fits back into that product cycle because, and I use Coca-Cola as an example again, right? That we jumped through. Coca-Cola, in in the 1800s when it came out, right? Like it hit a trigger of like hitting the peak of inflated, and and it dropped off for a little bit, and then it came back up, and there's this hype. And what Coca-Cola does is it continues to revamp this hype cycle. And so I think, and from my perception, that's how it stays in this growth and maturity level, right? It stays in that peak of where they are, the maturity stage of their product, because they continuously create hype about it. And they were one of the first, not the first, but I gave you the example the other day where like the guy who made Coca-Cola successful wasn't the guy who created it. It was the guy who bought Coca-Cola and started marketing plates and cups and things with the brand on it. That's what made Coca-Cola popular. He created hype for Coca-Cola, right? It always tasted the same. It had the same Coca-Cola taste, even when you exclude the drug component of it, right? Like it had Coca-Cola taste. You move forward, and people liked it. He also mass produced it and allowed it to go out into the general population. So it created more of this trigger, this visibility of Coca-Cola, and then there were goods associated with it. And so when we talk about kind of new technology and creating new products or creating new goods, and we think about the product cycle they're going on, it's also related to how visible it is. And I think that your generation especially is very aware of how important or not how important, but how easy things go viral and then go away, right? Like how many of you, I don't even know, the salt guy, right? That was a viral hit. Rebecca Black, what was her song? Friday? Right? Something about Friday? But how many of you listened to Rebecca Black? Probably none of you, right? But that was a thing that everybody knew at the time. It was a visibility, that was a hype cycle. And I think that more and more advertisers are going to they're focusing on making sure that they get that hype, even if it's short-lived, that they get some kind of visibility, which means they're always trying to compete for who's going to go viral, for who is going to be the most popular in some way, which I think will be a shift in our marketing and how we market and how things are. And don't get me wrong, there's still traditional marketing. There's still traditional ways of, McDonald's. Yeah, McDonald's is the same way, right? Like they're always creating this hype and they're always reinventing themselves to be popular. McDonald's coming out with their song, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it, right? It was not around when I was younger. When I was younger, it was all about the playhouse. It was all about they were cartoony outside. It was all about the toys. And that was all their advertising came, right? And McDonald's has shifted its, has changed their looks, has changed their, they've continuously, had this hype, and they're trying to create this and drum up business in some way. I had some stuff on segmentation, but I think we're done with our class. So if we get time on Tuesday, we'll talk about it. If not, so Tuesday, come in with your questions for the exam. Where exam will be open on Wednesday morning, closed Thursday afternoon. You still get like 2 hours to take it. There shouldn't be, I wrote the exam. There's no graphing. There is one or two small mathy problems. It's open book, open notes. Again, I would look for everything since the last exam. I think is free game. I mean, I could have things. You still have to know the concepts from the previous exam, so those don't go away. But yeah, if you have any questions, stick around. Your final projects are also due on Thursday of next week, and I don't know what that happened. Are still due Thursday of next week, and it was lovely having you in class. I've enjoyed this. This is one of my favorite classes, and I mean, I only teach 2, and I like both of them equally. So it's one of my favorites. But no, I mean, I really I like the class, and I've appreciated having you this semester. And so just want to, in case I forget to say that on Tuesday, just want to make sure that I say thanks, and thanks for your resilience in getting through this class, because it's been a rough semester for everybody, and this coronavirus, which will go on my sheet for generations, Jacob, will define kind of these things that you'll look back on. And I'm glad that we could have shared this together. I mean, not glad. I'm glad that it was, you who I shared it with. So anyways, you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you Tuesday.
Do we have class next Thursday?
No, because I was going to just do an exam. It's original, right? Like, they're supposed to because technically we were supposed to present, right? We were going to present, and then we're not presenting. And so there wasn't going to be a class to have on Tuesday or Thursday. And so now at this point, if y'all want to get on a chit chat with me, I'll hop on, but it would be just to get this energy out, whatever way it floats. Anybody have any other questions? No, we're just hanging out. We're just gonna see how it's going. Just making sure nobody has anything. Bye, Christina. Bye, Marilyn. Unless you're coming to talk to me. Are you talking to me, Marilyn? Nope. Heather, you got anything?